All right, what's up, everybody? Today I'm going to be breaking down options basics. What are options? So there's two types of options. You have calls and puts. So calls, we're going to refer to them as C, and puts are going to be P. So first, we're going to start off with calls. So whenever you make a transaction in the stock market, there's always going to be a buyer and a seller. And that goes for everything. That goes for shares, and that goes for options. So pretty much for a call, most basic way I could say is when you buy a call, you're betting on a stock going up in price over a certain period of time. So when you're buying a call, the seller is pretty much giving you a contract agreement to sell you 100 shares of a certain stock at a certain price by a certain day. So let's use Tesla as an example. So let's say today Tesla is at 850. So it's $850 per share today. And the seller, they're saying, okay, I'm willing to sell you 100 shares of Tesla this Friday, April 15th, at $1,000 per share. So this would be a Tesla $1,000 call expiring April 15th. Right. So that seller is going to charge you money in the contract because there's a risk that Tesla might be worth more than $1,000, but they have to sell you the shares at $1,000. So they may be losing money on those shares if Tesla is over $1,000 by expiration date. So for example, they might charge you, let's say, $1,500 for that contract. So now that contract is worth $1,500, right? Let's say if it closes on Friday and Tesla shares are worth $1,100, just do the math. 1,100 times 100 is going to be 110,000. $110,000, and then let's do 100 times 1,000 is equal to 100,000. So the 100,000 that the Tesla is worth at the time of expiration minus the 100,000 that the seller has to sell you the Tesla shares for, you're making $10,000 on that. And the person selling the contract is losing $8,500. And the reason they're only losing $8,500 is because they collected the $1,500 up front, but they have to sell you the Tesla shares at $10,000 less than what they're worth. So 10,000 minus 8,500 is equal to 1,500. So they're only losing 8,500. And you as the buyer, you're going to be making 8,500 because you initially paid 1,500, and you're buying the shares now at $100 more than what the seller is selling it to you to. So you're making $100 per share times 100 equals $10,000. And that's pretty much how that works. But you can also trade the premium. So let's say Tesla tomorrow goes to $900. Now this premium, instead of being worth $1,500, now it might be worth $3,000, and you make $1,500 instead of having to wait for expiration and having to buy the shares. So that's pretty much how the calls work. On the other side, you have puts, and puts is pretty much the opposite. You're betting on a stock going down. So on a put, as a buyer, you're willing to buy 100 shares of a stock at a certain price by a given date. So let's say, as a buyer, you're willing to sell 100 shares of a stock at a certain price by a certain date, and the seller is willing to buy 100 shares of that stock at a certain price by a given date. So let's say Tesla again. Let's say today Tesla's at $850 per share, and you buy a $650 put expiring this Friday, April 15th. Pretty much what you're saying is, okay, if I wait until expiration, I will buy 100 shares of Tesla at whatever price it's at on expiration date, and then the seller has to buy those 100 shares at $650 per share. So what happens is, If Tesla closes at 600 on Friday, April 15th, then the buyer will be able to buy 100 shares of Tesla at $600, which is 60,000, and then the seller has to buy these shares at $650 each. So that means the buyer will be buying at 600 and selling at 650, and that's $50 times 100 shares equals $5,000, and that's what the buyer would make.